All right. Welcome to DEOL 738 for the summer session. I will start with our weekly schedules, catch up so we'll know where we are. Today is Saturday, June the 9th, and so we're now closing out our third week. This week you were at home. You're doing Zoom with me on Saturday morning on case study 16. The two groups will present their PowerPoints this morning, and later sometime this weekend, you will upload me a one-page reflection of both the process of working collaboratively virtually with your colleagues and today's presentations. The work that was due this week was Salkind chapters 11, 12, 17, and 21 on discussion boards, and those will finish up the Salkind book. Now, please remember, but starting next week, if you would like to continue with quantitative work, as you can see in the aqua color there, you can work on those Salkind tests on your own. Again, the aqua is that is optional. That's for those of you who want to pursue and get better at quantitative work. You can continue on a weekly basis pursuing that. I've got some tests and some data sets. You can kind of work through those at your leisure if you want to. Now, if you're done with quantitative, that's fine with me, because we're going to pick up and start after next week's class sessions, Saturday and Sunday, June 16 and 17 here on campus up in room 209. After next week, we will start as a group. We'll start with Miriam, the qualitative work, and you'll begin on those discussion boards. So at the end of this week, you should have closed out Salkind, so that following next week you can start with Miriam. As I said, we will be here on campus next weekend, June 16 and 17. I will have breakfast at 8:30. If you have a biscuit preference, email that to me. I will have other goodies, coffee and drinks and water and those kinds of things. As you know, the vending machines here are and there isn't anything else open on campus usually, and so I'll have stuff, and we'll do that at 8:30. Now, on Sunday morning at 9 o'clock, I do my devotional. If you choose not to participate in that devotional, it won't hurt my feelings. Show up at 9:30 on Sunday morning, and I'll remind you next Saturday. But from 9 to 9:30, I do my devotional on Sunday morning. And then we have class. If you want to show up at 8:30 for breakfast and then step out, that's fine. Or if you want to wait till 9:30, that's fine as well. It's up to you, but I'll have breakfast both days. All right. Then the week after, week 5, you have another case study due, 16A, and then you'll, as I said, you'll begin your Miriam discussion boards. That's your qualitative work, interviews and observations, data sets, documents. And so, again, you can continue on with your quantitative work at your leisure if that's what you want to do. The next weekend, the 6th, will be class sessions 4 and 5, Saturday and Sunday, June 30th and July 1st. You'll continue with the required Miriam discussion boards. July 2nd through 8th, you'll be at home that week, and we'll do, on July 7th, we'll do our third case study, data gathering and PowerPoint reflection. The 8th week, you're at home, you do the AIRS discussion boards from the book Super Crunchers, which kicked off the whole analytics era back in 2007. It's the seminal work that we all draw back to as being the first person who said, look what you can do and look what people are doing. Then week 9, you'll be at home and you'll do discussion boards for Davenport, the Quants book, which is a more modern, updated version, a little more wonky version of Super Crunchers. It's called Keeping Up with the Quants. You'll do those that week. And then our last week, we'll do our final case study. And you'll take the 20-question final exam. I do need you to take that. Those are 20 things I think you ought to know if you leave this course. I took it again the other day and got them all right, so it can't be too hard. And so that's where we are. I'm looking forward to next week. And we get ours. I hope you had, Dr. Hamilton said that you had a good time last Saturday at your lab day. Again, I apologize for not being there. I have my big charity function is always the first weekend in June. I've got a couple things going on that day. I'm really busy, and so I direct a charity, and so that was my day. I've tried to get Dr. Hamilton to move the date, but I guess I should be moving mine rather than him moving his. Anybody have any questions on the schedule, what the expectations are? Good. All right, I'm going to close that. Now, I've had some folks who had a little misunderstanding about the case study materials. All right, so I had case study directions here and how to analyze the case study, how to go about doing that, presentation rubric, the case study reflection rubric. Okay, here's the first case study, 16. Second one is 16A. The third one is data gathering case study. Now, these three cases go with the data gathering case study. They are not separate studies. This is, you pick one of these three as your data set to go with this one. And then the last one is your giving feedback. And I've got conducting effective interviews. That one goes with this one. You need this one to go with that one, to go with giving feedback. And then, and there are your Zoom teams. So you know who your teams are. So any questions so far on anything going on? Any feedback that you have that you can give me?
So Dr. Dale, am I the one doing the Zoom Master today? This is Rebecca.
Yes.
Okay, so I don't know how to upload things. Like, so are you gonna send this link to me today and then I add it on to YouTube?
Do you not? No, I will send you the link for y'all from today's session, and you can put it in. I will send you the link to YouTube where you can watch this. For your PowerPoint presentation today, all you have to be able to do is have it uploaded on your computer at home, and then I will make you the host, stop my video, and we'll see your screen.
Okay. Okay.
So that's part of today is me teaching you how to do that.
Okay.
And so that's what we're going to do today. So
okay.
That's why I want you to rotate so that everybody gets the opportunity to learn how to do this, where you can actually host a meeting and share your information with colleagues or with other people. So what we'll do, so that kind of kicks us off. So what we'll do is I'm going to go to my dashboard now to manage participants, and I am going to go to Rebecca, and it's going to give me a more, and I'm going to make Rebecca the host. All right. So it's going to take a second. And Rebecca, you should see on the screen a little message flare up says you are now the host.
Yes.
All right. So now I'm going to go back to and I'm going to stop my video. And you should be able to pull up do you have a dashboard where you can share screen?
I don't see, yes, I see share screen. Okay.
There you go.
Let me pull up mine.
It's always best if you can pull up documents before you start your screen share.
Okay.
It'll eventually come up, but sometimes it gets a little wonky.
Okay.
But go ahead and pull up your document.
So Dr. Lamb, you had to shut down your video so we don't see you.
Yeah, I think there's a way that you can see me, but when Rebecca starts sharing, I think I can turn mine back on.
Okay.
But I have found that usually it's easy to get the person on if I stop my video.
Gotcha.
Again, these are lessons learned. And part of the problem is that we don't all use the same equipment. Some people use Microsoft-based machines, some use iPads, some use Macs. It seems like every week it's different. But consistently, if to get the person on to start their screen sharing, usually I have to.
Okay, good to know.
Can you all see my screen?
Not yet.
Did you click the share screen button, Rebecca?
Yes, let me try it again.
Okay.
There we
There you
go.
are.
There we go.
There you are.
Okay.
There we go. All right.
Okay, can you see my presentation now?
I
Yes.
can. Excellent.
Okay.
All right. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to move that out of the way. So I'm going to see if I can start my video back up without turning hers off.
Hey,
It's almost like I do this for a living, isn't it?
wow.
All right. We're ready to roll.
Okay, group mates, you all ready?
Yes.
Okay. So obviously we don't have to go over the title because we have the same one. So I'll let Razan start.
Okay. So good morning, everyone. Our case study today is about how to measure the organization effectiveness. And we have some learning objective in our case. Is the first one is to understand the complicated issue of measuring organizational effectiveness of the non-profit organization. And the second one is to recognize the tension in the non-profit sector between business-like approach to the organization development and more hostilical approach to serve their vision. And the last one is to learn more about the role of communication and the social construction of the organizational development. Okay.
Okay, hold on. Trying to get to the next.
And now our organization is all about the CAN, which is the Community Action Network. It's a large cooperation of the nonprofit organization and government agencies that work on social service and community development in the city of Austin. And since they start their work, they see that it's gonna be valuable or more valuable if they make some research or report to measure the organizational effectiveness, so their partner can take a decision depends on these research or reports. And according to the economic downturn, many of the CAN partner, they start to rethink about their relationship with the let's say very funding or something like this. And also there was more pressure from the funders for nonprofit organizations to measure their effectiveness and demonstrate the effectiveness of their organizations. In this case study, we have like key actors and roles. We have the host and we have
Luke Sorensen.
Just a minute because the screen is not okay.
Oh, that's showing. Is it showing now?
Yeah.
It's a little blurry.
Yeah, I cannot see it, but it's okay.
Oh, I don't know what.
We have Mr. Luke, who's the director of CAN, and also we have Robert and David. They are professor in the University of Missouri. And we have Dr. Lori. She's a professor in the Communication Studies Department. And also we have we have Lori, and we have the last one,
Roderick Buffkin.
Roger Baptiste, and we have Lucinda Pickett.
So when we're looking at organizational effectiveness, we kind of, as we went through the case study, picked out the four main things that they were discussing as we were reading. So one was the organizational effectiveness is related to the organization's board of directors and the use of correct management styles or management practices. And so, of course, we all know that depending on of how we organize this organization, depending on our policies and procedures, kind of dictate how effective we're going to be and how our stakeholders are going to react to those, or how impacted they're going to be. The other one is nonprofit effectiveness is a social construct. And so what we realize with this is that in order for us to be effective, people have to believe in what we're doing. They also have to believe that it's achieving some type of purpose. They have to be impacted by it. And so those are one of the things that are going to help with our organizational effectiveness. The other one is nonprofit effectiveness is intimately connected with the mission of the organization. And so again, we want to make sure that all of these practices and procedures, all the services that we offer go back to what our mission is. And so that way it's clearly demonstrated through everything that we do. And then again, nonprofit effectiveness is more about quality of those services. And so making sure that we're not really thinking a lot about quantity, even though quantity is important, but making sure that those services are up to standard, that people are impacted by what we're doing.
Okay.
And so the central problem or central issue is determining how to measure that effectiveness and then how to communicate that to our stakeholders. And so again, we have this economic downturn that's happening and less financial resources, but how do we take what we have? How do we communicate that to others? How do we show the impact that we are having on our services that we're offering to our clients or to our customers?
Oops. All right, so we were able to create some recommendations for the organization. And the first one is to create a theory of change. And this is just how we describe a nonprofit creates change. It's a fundamental thing to do because it allows the organization to have a strategic direction and understand what they're trying to change. So it gives an idea of the direction that they're trying to go to provide the services that they say they provide. So in order to do that, you have to chart a strategic direction, prove your results, and secure more support for organization. So I was able to find an example of a theory of change for a literacy program. So here they have it outlined as an input. So an input would be getting money, kids, volunteers, and staff to have the organization running. And then, of course, the kids are the people who are going to be receiving the services. Then have the activities outlined, such as give books to at-risk kids. And then output would be the number of kids and the number of books. Then we have outcomes, which would be the stay in school and the better grades, and the impact is a stronger economy, safer streets. So I know for nonprofits, it's hard for them to do quantitative research, but this was kind of a little bit on that line with like the number of kids and the number of books, but then still being able to have the data about the quality of their services in the outcome and the impact.
Well, and that, and it helps to go back just one more. There you go. Okay. It's interesting with this one too, with our theory of change, we're going to have to gain that buy-in as well. And so I love the one thing about this theory of change is the outcome and impact part is the part that we'll be able to communicate. And so, with us talking to different people who have been impacted by the organization helps us be able to tell that story so that others can be related to that, so they can kind of see what we're doing and the quality that we're giving based off other people and their responses.
Okay, so recommendation 2, ensuring that your organization has policies and processes in place to hold leaders accountable for their behaviors as well as results. So we want to be able to provide the tools, training, knowledge, and skills that would allow each leader to realize his or her full potential. And this is just something that we thought of because when you're running a nonprofit, you need to make sure that everybody is aligned, everybody is on the same page, and is willing to put in the work. And so hopefully by training them and letting them know what our values are and our vision and giving them the skills that they need, they'll be able to realize their full potential and run the organization. Our third recommendation is something that we would like to ask our leaders, like, what is our vision and value, and how does that go into our value and approach, which then ultimately goes to our structure and alignment. We want the leaders in our organization to be able to tell us what each of these mean to this organization and how that affects the community that we're serving. And then our fourth one is for all of the partners of the organization to understand the why. Nonprofits do have an advantage of getting people dedicated to the work when the goals are stressed of serving others. When researching this, we learned that people kind of have like a cognitive, dissonance if they understand that the work that they're doing is to help other people. And so if nonprofits are getting the right people on and explaining clearly what their why is, then they can have a little bit more buy-in from their staff once they understand that. And then lastly, we just want to make sure that we have the right people who are involved with the nonprofit. People may express interest in helping provide service, but they may not carry out the goals as needed for the organization. And I thought of that one because I am currently working with a nonprofit for my consultancy, and we often see people who are interested in providing services, but then once they get in, they are maybe not as dedicated because they didn't really understand what they were doing. So for this organization, we would want them to fully have clear job descriptions and understand. Maybe there can be like a vetting process before people are signed on completely with the organization. And then organizational effectiveness as a social construction. And so that is nonprofits need consistent communications with stakeholders and funders to shape perception of the organization and solidify their work. So what that means is that the judgment and effectiveness of their outcome are from the interactions from their stakeholders, funders, and community. This social construction is basically saying that they are kind of what people are, what their impressions of the people are thinking of them. Excuse me. So they have to have that relationship and be able to communicate with them so that they firmly understand their goals and how that they have been achieving them. So they have to have that perception of them, that their work is impacting their community, for stakeholders to have a buy-in and wanted to continue to provide funds for the organization. So, and then, excuse me, I have a little lag on my computer. So performance metrics for nonprofits, fundraising costs per dollar raised. How much money are we making from these fundraisers? Are they effective? Are people showing up and donating and giving out money? How it compares to similar organizations? We can, if somebody is trying to provide more books to a school, if there's similar organizations in the area or that we can research, how are they performing? And we can kind of look at our results to theirs. And then how well the nonprofit serves its purpose. This one was difficult. I guess it can be a little challenging because let's say their goal is to give out books to a school, but if they're only able to give 12 books versus 500, does it mean that they're not serving its purpose? Technically, yes, it is, but maybe we want to put a little more business aspect on the nonprofit to maybe create ways to get more resources to impact more kids. and then awareness of what the organization does in the community. The best thing that a nonprofit can do is really get out in the community so people understand what they are doing and so that people want to be involved.
And so as we're thinking about all the different recommendations, trying to figure out a way to implement the plan. And so this would be a process that I think could take from now until the rest of the, sorry, I'm thinking of the semester, the rest of the year. And so, you know, we're thinking about, again, how are we going to understand our law? You know, how are we going to take that and review and evaluate our missions and values and structures? You know, how do we show access of the quality through quantitative and qualitative data collection? And then we evaluate that. And then take that time to be able to revise and reevaluate the strategic plan. And so usually nonprofits have a strategic plan already in place, but how do we continue to reevaluate and revise that? And then we want to develop those trainings so that we can train our employees and stakeholders, regardless if that's on, you know, again, what our mission is, but then what our programs are, and, you know, making sure that everybody's on the same page before moving forward with other ways or other fundraisers or ways to communicate. So. Are there any questions?
I want just to add something, Maria and Rebecca. It's in the non-profit organization, the most important thing is how to choose your employee. They should be like believe in the organization mission and vision, and they should be able to serve and develop the community under any conditions. So it's really important how to choose your employees. It's really important how to choose your boards, and it's important also to share your thoughts and beliefs with them so they can understand more your vision and values. So
thanks, Suzanne.
Anybody else have anything? Any other questions? All right, I have some. Me. Can we back up to the slide recommendation 1? We'll start there. All right, how to create a theory of change, chart a strategic direction. Does that say prove past results?
Prove your results.
Does it say prove past results?
Nope.
What does it say? How to create a theory of change. Look at that part over here on the left side of your screen. Read me those 3 bullets.
Chart a strategic direction, prove your results, secure more support for your organization.
Your results, not past results. Prove your results.
Yes.
Ooh.
It's blurry. That's why.
Oh, okay.
That's why he's asking you to read.
Yeah, I can't read that part.
I'm not sure why it's showing up blurry on you all.
I don't know.
What kind of ours may do the same thing. I don't know.
What kind of machine are you using, Rebecca?
It's an HP.
Okay, I don't understand. But anyway, I got it now. Did you copy that just straight out of the change theory, or did you come up with those 3?
This one, yeah. I kind of shortened a little bit, yeah.
Don't ever.
It came from a theory. That was it, and then I just kind of minimized it.
Don't use prove if you can help it, ever.
Okay, don't use prove.
No.
So what would be better? Demonstrate.
You know, demonstrate, show, those kinds of words. Prove is we don't do prove in statistics. We don't do prove. We do correlation. We do association. We don't do cause and prove if we can help it, because there can always be alternative explanations. When you start using terms that are that concrete, that's when your critics eat you up, because they can say there could have been there was other reasons. You know, there was an economic boom, or you got this, or you got that, or there was a one-time thing that happened. Show your results or demonstrate your results is a much better term there. In statistics, stay away from cause and prove. Those are two kind of no words in statistics. They're too absolute. There's too many other variables, and we'll talk about that next week. But we try to stay away from those. It gives our critics opportunity to, when we're that absolute, it tends to fire people up and get them angry at us and want to bring in alternative explanations and those kinds of things. It's kind of like waving a red flag in front of a bull. Don't do that. It kind of marshals the forces against you when you do those kinds of things. So just like show your results. That's an excellent slide. Stay away from proven cause. All right, go to the next one.
Can y'all email the PowerPoint? Because that's last slide. I couldn't even really make out the word.
They'll upload it in Blackboard.
Oh, okay.
Y'all can see it there. I'll make sure we all have them. All right. Let me do a quick qualitative, quantitative. Qualitative is more dispositional. It's the information is through interviews and observations. It's more about how people feel than measurable kinds of things. Obviously, quantitative is data from operational definitions and from a validated measure. The thing where we get in trouble in organizations is when we think that we can kind of put those two things together and do a little of this. And while mixed methodology gives us a richness of data and gives us a more complete picture of what's actually going on, we have to be careful that we don't mix the methodologies together. They are completely separate and they're for a different purpose. Some purists don't believe that they should be in the same study. I'm not one of those people, but I do believe that you have to have qualitative separate from quantitative. So when you start holding people accountable for behaviors as well as results, behaviors is qualitative. That's good. Result is quantitative. That's good. But don't just kind of run them together like this. They're two completely separate things. I don't mind. The sentence is fine, but I just need for you to understand that we can't kind of just lump all that stuff together. We have to go over our numbers side, and then we have to go over behaviors, feelings, feedback, qualitative, how culture, those kinds. We have to go over those things separately. Just understand that we can't just kind of run them all together. Doesn't work that way. And so when you are holding people accountable, yes, you should have metrics that are measurable on the quantitative side, and then you have interviews, observations, things on the qualitative side. But we have to treat them very differently in terms of how we collect that data, and we have to be sure to keep them separate.
Professor, do we need to use quantitative and qualitative in each research, or we can just use one of them?
You got to use both.
Both.
Mm-hmm. But you can't just put them together. You can't put them together. They have to be two separate things because they have two different goals. They're not designed for the same purposes. All right, go to your next slide. All right. Just as a point of clarification, vision is set by the organization and by the board, and the leadership in that professional leadership in the organization tries to carry out the vision, and that is true. And that's why you've got to have your social construction, your board members. Everybody has to have the same vision, what's important to the organization and those kinds of things. But mission is determined by the client system. By the what? By the client system.
Oh, client system.
Client system determines the mission. The people who are consuming and or paying for the services are the people who determine what the mission is. Because if they choose not to pay, it doesn't matter what our vision is. In this one, they were trying to figure out a way to better represent their organizational effectiveness to the people who were sending them money. And so the mission is determined by the people who are sending the money. What do you want us to do? Here's our vision as an organization. We want to go out and do all these things. Oh, that's all well and good. But the people cutting the checks, you better ask them what they want. That's your mission, is to fulfill the people cutting the check, the client system, the people that are buying your services. Your customer, the client system. The client means paying. You're providing a service through a social contract to a third party over here that needs help, homeless, a homeless and abuse shelter, whatever you're, a homeless shelter, abuse, women and children. That's who you're serving. That's your social contract. But you have a client system that's paying for this, that's cutting the check. You better make sure that what they want, which is called the mission, is aligned with your vision, what you as an organization. If you don't, you're going to have problems, because you're thinking, I'm doing all this wonderful work over here, and the people cutting the check are like, we're not happy with that. You got to make sure that your mission and your vision are aligned. Vision is what the organization itself, your nonprofit, wants to do, feels compelled or called to do. Mission is what people cutting the checks want done. There cannot be a goal displacement there. You must be on the same page. So the first thing that you have to do is sit down and collaborate with your stakeholders. This is what we propose to do. What do you want us to do? What will you pay for? Now let's design an evaluation system that has quantitative, how many we serve, how many dollars we spend, how many beds, how many meals, those kinds of things. All right, we agree on that, and then on the qualitative side, we agree on the things that are more ethereal and not measurable, the dispositional things that we want to see this organization do as well. But we must agree on all of those, but we have to kind of separate them out. We can't let the feelings get into the numbers side. And so again, it's all about collaboration with the people who are cutting the checks, whether it be a state or local agency that's giving you money, like county commissioners or people like that, or if it's private organizations or individual philanthropists. You've got to know what they want. That would be the mission. This is what you want to do as an organization. That's your vision. They have to come together, and they must mesh. If not, you've got problems. And so for this case study, the thing that we really need to understand here is the difference between qualitative and quantitative, that we can't mix the two. We need to understand the difference between vision and mission, and that they must be congruent. They must come together at some point, and that the people paying have to have a seat at the table when you determine what the evaluation is. You can't just determine your own evaluation metrics and go out and tell everybody, look how successful. I can prove that I'm good. Well, prove is awful strong word. They have to agree to the metrics of evaluation. They should be a part of determining that how we're going to hold ourselves accountable. What are our measures of success? The people paying for the services need a seat at that table.
So the organizational effectiveness will be the success of the mission and the vision at the same time.
At the same time. You can't separate them out. You can't separate them out. What you want to do has to be what the people who are paying for it want you to do. And that leads you to understand then, whoa, they better have a seat at the table when it comes time to developing the metrics to evaluate this place. They've got to have a seat at the table then, because that's what's important to them. Too many times we develop our own rubrics, metrics, ways to evaluate ourselves, and then we go take it to somebody and it makes them mad. Well, I don't agree with that. You're proving that you're doing this or that or the other. I don't agree with that. I don't think you're doing this or that, or I don't think, I hear that it's not nearly as good. Yeah, you're serving a lot of people, but I hear that you're not doing a good job with them. I hear kind of thing. That's become very popular in our culture. I'm hearing or I hear. You don't have to have data to back that up because that's qualitative. If you're talking in the quantitative realm, you've got to have numbers to back it up. But anybody can walk in and say, well, I'm hearing or I feel. And that's valid because qualitative, that's pretty much what it is hearsay, talking with people, observing. So the point of this whole exercise is that your client system, the people cutting the checks, they have to have a seat at the table when you're determining what the metrics will be to evaluate your nonprofit organization. Because the vision and the mission have to match. And they have to agree that with you that if you do these things, or if we hear these things, that's good. And if you don't do these things or we hear those things, that's bad. We have to agree what's good and bad going forward with the people cutting the checks. If we don't do that, we're in trouble.
Dr. Lamb, what's coming to my mind is, let's just say there's 10 people writing checks to this network. My guess is
where you're going.
Yeah, my guess is they at least have 8 or 9 different things that they want, and so it's just a matter of working through a process of coming to some agreements on this is what we want, and you hope all 10 buy in enough to still send the check.
Yeah, that the problem is when they have conflicts among themselves.
Right.
And trying to manage that conflict of what's important. I recently went over and did a day with a nonprofit organization here in Cleveland County that wanted to do they were picking basically their employee of the year. And so when I walked
that's trouble right there.
Exactly right. That's why you bring somebody else in to get mad at the people. That's, what their first day. And so they brought me in to lead this group of community people who were going to interview and pick their employee of the year. I had an attorney, I had a pastor, I had me, and had one more, and she was just a stay-at-home mom. And and I don't mean that.
Take the word "just" out of that sentence.
That's what I said. I don't mean that pejoratively. She was a stay-at-home mom, but that's what they wanted, and so they composed this group. But when I walked in, I said, "All right, so that we don't get into a fist fight later on, let me ask you, as the organization, do you want us to find somebody and reward them that you think did the absolute best job for your organization this year, or do you want us to find the person? Obviously, all these candidates have done a good job. Do you want us to find the person that you think can go forward and be represented in a larger group and bring public relations and interest and bear a positive light on your organization across the state? I mean, those are two completely different things. Are we rewarding who did the best job, or are we rewarding or you want us to pick the person who's going to be your best PR person as they travel around the state speaking as your employee of the year? And they said, oh, that's clear. We want somebody that can go out and promote our organization. Well, there you go. And so it was easy for me to lead this team because we heard from the actual organization what they were looking for. And it was easy for me as the consultant to lead them through that. It was fairly easy. And then when we got done, they said, well, we've had a really hard time with this in the past. Why did this go so easy? Well, we understood what we were trying to do, and everybody knew what we were trying to do up front. We all agreed. All these different constituencies came together, but we had to agree to begin with what our outcome was supposed to be. As Tammy was talking about, the problem that you get into when you have to try to get your client system together is many of them have different agendas. They have different social contracts that they want met, and trying to get them all to share the same mission going forward or same vision going forward. Vision again is what you want to do. Vision is what you have to do based on your client system. To try to get them to have the same mission going forward. Sometimes it's difficult. So usually what you have to do is bring in an organizationalist to get them to understand that you got to put your personal biases aside. This is what we're looking for here. To work with them to get them all on the same page. That's harder than it sounds.
Yes.
Much harder than it sounds. As the group that I worked with here in Cleveland County this year, the attorney was a contrarian to begin with. By nature, that's what she does for a living. And she seems to be very successful at it. But she by virtue of her training and I guess maybe her personality, she doesn't agree with anything to begin with. That's just not who she is. And the lady who was the stay-at-home mom, who was a professional but was stay-at-home mom, she was such a nice person, she would agree with anything. So somewhere in between, you have to kind of, you can't just let one run over the other. And so that's the role of the organizationalist, is to work with the client system to get them mission-wise all on the same page so that you can then herd out your metrics of this is a way that we can show that we are effective as an organization. Show, not prove, that we're effective as an organization. I think I've hit all the points that I want. I could spend another hour or two talking about this one, but I see our time is up. I like 45 minutes. There's one thing that I want that I think Rebecca or maybe DeMario mentioned there in subsequent slides here. You got to be careful if you are operating the nonprofit, and it's your duty to if you're consulting with a nonprofit, to caution them about people who want to come and work for you as a volunteer. We all know the horror stories of background checks, but I'm not just talking about people who are bad people who may be child molesters or pedophiles or whatever. I'm talking about resume builders. Probably 30 years ago, maybe 35, obviously before my time going from high school to college, but shortly thereafter, we started this notion that college admission, that we would factor in community service opportunities. When I came through, it was just test scores only. Your standardized test scores and your grades. That was it. But I don't know whether I guess maybe it was this notion that standardized test scores aren't valid for everybody, or that there was other people out there that deserved to get in, that were wonderful people or whatever. But we decided that we would start factoring in all these community service activities. And so now, as a former high school principal, I can tell you, we had a lot of kids who got into all kinds of charitable kinds of things and organizations just to pad their resumes. I say that to say this, that has carried over to their adult professional life. You have a lot of folks out there now who want to pad their resumes with these titles and this work in charitable organizations. However, they don't actually want to do any work. It's just a resume builder for them. And it's like if you ask them to do any work, what a dirty trick. You asked me to do work? I can't believe this. I just got involved in this so I could put it down on my resume, so I look better on my LinkedIn profile. That's real. Fully half. And I'm a quantitative person, and I don't have the data in hand, but I've read enough studies on this to understand that about half the people that volunteer to work in charitable organizations or nonprofits, or as Dr. Hamilton calls them, for impact programs, half of them are just their resume building. Just they want to write it down. And you need to understand that as a consultant, and so that when you consult with companies, you need to have some kind of a screening process, more than just background checks to figure out if they're pedophiles or not. You need some kind of a screening process to figure out if these people actually want to come and work with you, or if they just want to put it on their resume. Because people who don't respond back, or who don't answer emails in a timely fashion, or who aren't ever there, they're more of a hindrance than a help. And that was one of the things that you mentioned, but unfortunately, nonprofits. I've got a, and I won't mention his name because you might know the group that he's working with. I've got a student that was with me last semester in 738 in Charlotte. He actually works at Gardner Webb, and his consultancy group is here nearby, and the folks that are in leadership and through the group, they're just there in name only, and they want him to do all their work. So his consultancy is about him coming in and doing the work, and I've cautioned him that that's not really the role of the consultant, is to do the work. They have all these volunteers, but they all basically seem to just want their name on the letterhead, or to build resumes. They're people trying to build careers, and so he's kind of in a bind in terms of, they're expecting him basically to do all the work of the organization, pull off a charity event, and do all these things by himself. Even if you don't get in a situation that bad as a consultant, you need to be able to share with your organization that they need some kind of a system to weed out the resume builders. Otherwise, it won't matter what metrics you come up with for evaluating the organization, how much agreement you have on vision and mission between the organization and the client system that's writing the checks. If you don't have people who can carry out the work, you're still sunk. So you can do all this wonderful organization. My point is, kind of the benediction on this one this morning is, you can do all this wonderful organizational work, but if you don't have anybody to carry out the actual work of the organization, the best laid plans will fail for you.
Dr. Lamb?
So you've got to make sure your organization understands. Avoid the resume builders.
Dr. Lamb?
Mm-hmm.
I have some points here, because I am a person who really care about my resume, and I really want to develop it and improve it as much as I can. But at the same time, because I really care about my resume, I don't mind to work as a volunteer in any job. But it doesn't mean that I don't care about their job. I really want to take the experience, and I really want to know how they work. And I really want to improve them as much as I can, because it will improve my resume. So I don't know.
Well, it's okay to want to improve your resume if you'll do the work. The problem that we get into is and I hate to be pejorative here. I mean, I'd like to be young again as well. But what we find is we've developed generations, and we caused it ourselves, of young people who believe that the way to get ahead is to build your resume, not do the work. They learned that in high school when they had they had 7 or 8 things on their resume, and that they couldn't have done any of them well because they had too many. That's the first thing. That's how you spot the resume builders. They have them send you a resume, and it's 17 pages long, and you're thinking, how in the world could they get all this stuff done? This organization, that organization, unless they're a super person. And then you call them in and you speak to them specifically about the work that they did. They can't tell you anything that they did. They just signed up so they could put it on their resume. You can tell that really quickly with people, how in depth they were.
Razan, what Dr. Lamb's saying is that you are not in that group.
No, you're not in that group. You sign up to work for the experiences, and yes, it builds your resume. It's okay to build your resume if you go do the work. But we have taught people, unfortunately, in this country, we've taught them that the only thing that's important is just getting your name, is to get your name on in that organization so you can put it on your resume, that there's no work required.
Everybody gets a trophy.
Yeah, there you go. Mm-hmm. That's the example. We have built a culture where everybody gets a reward, everybody gets a trophy, whether they do anything or not. I refer to it as resume building. That's exactly right. But Carmen's exactly right. Another euphemism is everybody gets a trophy. And when you have an organization full of those kind of people, nothing ever gets done. And that's what I better be careful about to say his name, but that's what that's what our colleague and our classmate is experiencing is they've got all these people, but they don't ever even show up. They just put it down in order to build their resume. They're absentee all the time. But when you call them up, are you really, are you still with us? Are you in? Oh yeah, I'm still part of the organization. Yeah, I'm still volunteering. But you've never shown up for any of our events. You've never come and done anything. Yeah, but I need it on my resume. Well, there you go. Everybody gets a trophy kind of thing. That's a good example, Carmen. All right, very good job. Let's see if I can get us out of this one. Participants, reclaim host, that would be me. Share screen. Yes, I want to share. Go to my desktop, share screen. All right. Okay, who's up next?
I think I'm the host. I need to be given host.
All right, so let me go to more. I'm going to make Carmen the host. Yes,
you better not be thinking you're the host. You are the host.
Better be more sure than that.
I am the Zoom master.
We're just about to prove that you're the host.
Thank you, Tim.
All right, if you'll now share your screen.
Can everybody see that?
I can.
Yes.
Okay. Team, am I sharing the full screen?
Yeah.
Okay. I'm using 2 monitors, so I wanted to make sure I had it on the right one. Okay. Okay. We are also going to be discussing measuring organizational effectiveness in the nonprofit sector. And the team is myself and Tammy and MA.
Good morning. My topic today is to discuss the Community Action Network key players. As Razan has showed us earlier, there are actually 8 key players. And not to regurgitate the same information, if you look at the slide, you will see who is in what position in reference to the key players of this case study. What we need to understand with the content is that the Community Action Network will be required to produce that qualitative and quantitative information to make sure that the mission is actually linked to the vision, how it's measured, and what are ways that we can come up with the cohesiveness to get all the members in the community of the Action Network for the nonprofit, based on what their roles are, how they come together as a team. The one key thing that I wanted to note here is that in this particular case study, I feel like all of the board members or key players involved are totally dedicated and actually involved in their particular nonprofit. However, without going further within the case, I'm just giving the overview, we will find things to notice that communication is more of a huge problem because we have dedicated stakeholders, we have dedicated what you call the personnel who are the directors or managers in charge of the various organizations.
Professional staff.
Professional staff. Thank you very much, sir. However, if we look at, his name is Roderick Buffkin. He is actually the operational, he's in charge of operations at the homeless shelter. And he is closer to the quantitative behavior side as far as measuring the success in the nonprofit sector. However, if you look at the professor, his name is, he's the director, he is the one who feels like, he's the director of CAN, that everyone is a great professor, a great player, key player. What's the word you call this, sir? What did you want to call him? Professional
staff.
Professional staff.
You know, you have in nonprofit organizations, you have board directors who are unpaid, and they set the vision of the organization where to go. The professional staff is there to carry that out. It's kind of like the president's office in the college, the superintendent's office in the public school system. They carry out the directives of their board. We call those people professional staff. That means they're getting paid. They're professionals. They may be in a nonprofit organization, but that doesn't mean that they work for free.
Right.
They are in a paid role, and we call them professional staff.
So I feel like we have a little bit of an advantage there because you gave us the opportunity to first see the first case. And then for me, it's a better understanding to know, as Tammy was talking about, 10 nonprofit stakeholder professional staff, what is really objective. But I think in this case, all of the professional staff are totally dedicated and they feel that they are not just making a resume. However, what's happening is, as you had stated, Dr. Lamb, we need an outsider to come and look in and let everybody know that they are of value. However, to keep this particular nonprofits within this community intact, we have to look at some of the business practices for a commercial business to see what the return on investment is, which may not necessarily be a dollar measurement.
Easy there. Now we're blurring the lines between qualitative and quantitative. Yes, we need financial measures, and how many we're serving, how many it's costing. But we can't let that bleed over into, well, that may not be the whole story. That it is the whole story for the quantitative side. Now, for the qualitative side, we start looking at the quality of the services. But we can't mix them together and start making assumptions. They're two separate things.
This is the overview. All this is just the overview. I guess we should have put overview of the case because we know the case, but I was just wanting to explain how the professional player in the homeless shelter, Roderick, feel like that it's not all about dollars as far as the measure is concerned. That's what my key objective is to state for this particular slide. And we can move on to the case now.
Okay, so our learning objectives today are really to understand measuring organizational effectiveness in the nonprofit sector. And of course, we've talked a lot about that this morning, but to recognize the tensions in the nonprofit between approaches to organizational development and approaches to service. So those that really have that business mindset and those that have the high impact service mindset. And then to learn about communication and social construction of organizational effectiveness. So these are really our 3 learning objectives for today. And so out of that, we want to consider and address 4 different topics. Number 1, recommendations for organizational effectiveness, including agencies and funding, how that funding piece works, then stakeholders and organizational effectiveness, social construction in organizational effectiveness, and then relevant performance metrics for nonprofit organizations. And then the next slide is on nonprofit organizational effectiveness. And this one is slightly wordy, but I felt like we might want to pull it out anytime we're working with a nonprofit, just to remind ourselves of really what organizational effectiveness looks like. And that is that it's always a matter of comparison, that it is very multidimensional. Certainly how the board of directors, the management practices that they implement, strategic planning, financial forecasting, financial reporting, all these things certainly tie back into the organizational effectiveness. Also, the social construction to if people really believe that what we're doing is effective is certainly a part of the effectiveness. Organizational responsiveness, how quickly and how well we respond to the needs of our clients, the level of analysis, whether that's just interpersonal among the group or organizational, but then ultimately that a nonprofit is effective to the extent that they carry out their mission. So I felt like this was worth putting on a slide that we might want to pull back out just to jog our memories when we were working with nonprofits.
Let's remember, let's go back one. Let's remember, I love number 7 there. Let's remember, your in the end, it's your job to carry out the mission, because that's what the people want. Now, there's 2 types of people in nonprofits, and go back to MA's point. You have professional staff that are paid.
Right.
They're the professionals. You pay them. They show up to work every day. They expect a check. They're providing their services, their expertise. The people that you have to worry about resume building are the volunteers. Most nonprofit organizations have a paid staff, but the people who come and do the work, the actual envelope stuffing or the cleaning, doing whatever, the people who actually do the work are volunteers. The problem that we get into when we can't move our organizations, or we can't meet any of our metrics, any of our measures, is when we have a paid professional staff, but they bring in people who are just resume builders, that everybody gets a trophy bunch, and nobody does the work of the organization. The professional staff is there to direct the volunteers, but they can only direct them if they actually show up.
Right.
That in the end, that's the whether you actually do any work in a nonprofit is based on your volunteers. You usually can't afford to hire enough professional staff to actually do all of the work. Volunteers have to do the bulk of the work of the organization. But I love number 7 down there. Is effective to the extent that they carry out their mission. And again, the mission is determined by the people cutting the checks. But back another point here, and I'll hush and let you get on with your presentation. The numbers are the numbers, period. We don't attach qualitative feelings and thoughts to numbers. That's why I said you can't mix the two. The numbers are the numbers. Then we'll talk about how effective we're doing on the other side, on the qualitative, from feedback from the client system, from the customers who are receiving the services. That's the qualitative side. But that has no bearing, zero bearing on the numbers. The numbers are the numbers. This is how many people we serve. This is how much it costs, period. And now we'll go over on the other side and start talking about how people feel about it, or how people perceive it, or what the folks who receive the services thought about it. That's a different thing. We make the mistake in organizations of thinking it's all just one big thing. Oh, no. It's not all big one thing, because remember, back to that original slide, you've got a lot of stakeholders in this thing. They don't see this. It's kind of like the old trick about blindfolding people and putting them around an elephant, and they'll all describe it differently because according to what part of the elephant that they're near, the tail or the trunk or the hoof. That's the way nonprofits are. According to what seat at the table you have a completely different view. But the numbers are the numbers. We can't start getting into opinions about numbers. Ooh, that makes me draw up. Remember, I'm the numbers person here. The numbers are the numbers, period. There is no interpretation of numbers.
So can I just be clear so I make sure I'm correct, sir? Excuse me, Tammy, I'm sorry. This is a learning experience. So I understand, and I just want to make sure I'm clear. I understand qualitative research or qualitative
data.
If we go within two categories, the basic and applied. That is more of the behavior, quality. Behavior
dispositional,
quality.
But it's qualitative data is gathered by interviews and observations. That's how we get it. Qualitative.
Okay.
And it's usually dispositional, how people feel. It's usually dispositional data about how people feel or perceive. Quantitative data is numbers from validated measures, like weight.
QUANT. I just want to make sure.
Quantitative is numbers. They're not debatable.
Okay, I just want to make sure. We know they're not equal.
Yeah, they're qualitative data collection is debatable in terms of what you saw or what you perceived or what people believe. We can enter into a discussion about that. We can't enter into a discussion about numbers. The numbers are the numbers. And where we make mistakes in organizations is we start thinking we can debate the numbers, or if I believe, or if I feel, or I don't think, or no, the numbers are the numbers. They're not debatable. It's become popular in our society to say, we had the most people at the inauguration. No, you didn't, because that's a number. We can count. Because you believe that you had the most is immaterial to the numbers. But that's become very popular in our society, is that if we believe it, that makes it true. No, it doesn't. Sorry, it doesn't make it true on the quantitative. If you feel in your heart on the qualitative side that you have people there with you in spirit, that's okay. But you can't put a number on that. I mean, that's a prime example of what I'm talking about. If you feel that way, that's okay. But we can't measure that. And so what happens is organizations that fail primarily fail because they let their emotions overrule their head in terms of their numbers. Because they think that they can switch back and forth from qualitative to quantitative, and that we can debate the numbers and that they're up for discussion. And that's when you usually, as a profit business, you go out of business, and nonprofits become defunded because they think that those numbers are a debate. They are not. And that's what I'm trying to get you to understand, is you can't mix the two together. You work on one, then you go to the other. How we collect the data is completely different. How we interpret, again, there is no interpretation of the number data. It is what it is. We can interpret qualitative data, not the quantitative. We can analyze the quantitative. We can run all kind of neat statistical analysis with calculus, and I can show you how to do that stuff. It's really fun, but we can't debate it. It's just we analyze quantitative data. We do not, we debate qualitative. We discuss it, but never the twain shall meet. All right, I've interrupted y'all enough.
So, if nonprofit effectiveness then is supposed to be multidimensional, the ability to communicate across all levels of the organization is key to continue relationships with all the stakeholders that are involved. So CAN, or CAN, I guess we're saying CAN, will need to recognize that communication to stakeholders must be delivered in varied ways in order to provide information specific to the need of each level, whether it be individual or group, or whether you're speaking with the board. For example, the CEO, the board, the donors, and the funding agencies, they may need communication as both qualitative and quantitative in the presentation, although it's not mixed. They will need to know the outcomes, how their money is being used in order to continue funding. They would also need to know that their money is making the difference. as well. So that report to them, they would need to know both sides. Volunteers and clients, they may not need to know, the quantitative side. They may just need to know that their contribution of time and energy is making a difference. So I guess the takeaway here is just understanding how to communicate the language that is needed for each entity or each stakeholder.
That's correct.
Secondary problems, we've established that the central problem is effective communication throughout all levels of the organization, but there's some other issues that we need to be made aware of. And first of all, to ignore the central problem would be very devastating to the organization, because it could result in a decreased funding and also impact services rendered. You wouldn't be able to make the difference that you make without the money that's given. So you have to recognize the connection and the importance of both sides of the equation. Awareness of the importance of communication with all stakeholders will allow Ken to turn the curve. That's an illustration there that I thought was sort of illustrated that if you turn the curve, it's going to take everybody doing it, and it's an effort. This includes being aware of the changing culture both within and outside the organization. I think nonprofits I work for a nonprofit, although it's not quite the nonprofit that maybe Tammy works with in regards to the community and nonprofits. But I think you can get wrapped up maybe in your own little piece of that world and totally ignore the other side of things. And that's, if you can't have a holistic picture, it can be not a good thing in regards to outcomes. So CAN's status as a nonprofit will require a program assessment that is measured quantitatively, and also using varied measures of qualitative research. That the picture depicts each side of that and how they balance each other, and how you can't really ignore one and be effective. Qualitative research is unstructured data, summaries and subjective conclusions, interviews, focus groups, observations, and just processing what's going on through the workday. Quantitative research is more structured. Like Dr. Lamb says, you don't argue with the numbers. Statistical analysis, objective conclusions, surveys, experiments. And I also feel like a lot of, from my experience, a lot of damage is done when certain data is left out. You know, you go around reporting on certain areas, and sometimes stakeholders or boards don't realize you're not reporting on something important, which is a whole nother soapbox. Okay, some more secondary problems. Finances and resources are vital to all organizations, nonprofits alike. They depend on others to survive. Nonprofits have to depend on their donors and their funding agencies, and they also depend on their volunteers and workers. I mean, they're very dependent. So how do we demonstrate effective organizational effectiveness is the million-dollar question. I put a slide in there that sort of, an example that talks about the organization, or that demonstrates the organizational effectiveness cycle. And you can see that at the top is strategic planning and mission, and how it sort of flows through everything else. It has to flow through everything else. I thought this was a good picture. Program initiatives and service goals, budget and resource planning, allocation, performance collaboration, training and development, assessment and feedback. Going back to that primary problem being communication, you can see how effective communication would be vital in order to make this flow. Okay, and some other supporting information that we wanted to talk about is the mission connection. The text talked a little bit about having a mission with too much ambition. if we make our if nonprofits have missions that are too lofty and hard to attain, like world peace, making sure the mission and strategic plan are aligned in order to keep goals realistic. It keeps you on track, and it forges the path. Communication then must be an ongoing and interactive process. A drop in communication can cause relationships again with stakeholders to be impaired, putting in danger, I'm so sorry, did I flip it? So, putting in danger much needed funding and resources. CAN is faced with the challenge of measuring the impact of their activities. And I imagine that this would be a daunting task. In a university setting, we have SACS, accreditation body that helps us keep on track with all of those measurements. And each unit does their own assessment and program goals, and we have to do that periodically. In a smaller nonprofit agency, or whether it's small or not, it would be the same kind of program evaluation, to understanding all the direct and indirect influences, and realizing that although the donors and the funding agencies are not exactly in the field with them, doing the work with them, their part is to have the outcomes in a measurable way so they can provide funding. Social construction, it's talked about a little bit, and I really enjoyed studying that whole concept. It's important to organizational effectiveness because it's something that involves the culture of the organization.
As Carmen stated, she talked about the culture and the mission. She showed us previously that we need to have that mission and the steps in providing what makes that mission possible in order to have a social construction of organizational effectiveness. If we look at this little cycle here, or circle, there are 5 different outer layers, and in the middle you'll see the core. With those outer layers, we see first is leadership. The leadership we know should set the mission, value, visions, and goals. And in order to do that, they need to have a decision-making structure for this to be accomplished. And then, of course, we need the people, or as Dr. Lambert spoke before, professional, what you call it, sir?
Professional staff.
Right. Professional staff. And once we have those people in this circle, which is a continuous process, you need to be able to work those processes and systems in order to make sure that with our social construction, that the measure of our qualitative and quantitative in our nonprofit sector is actually a system that is positive and uplifting, and that they do not go out of business or lose funding or lose valuable professional members.
Okay, so we're going to talk about some solutions for CAN. And so we're going to build our solutions out from the 4 areas that we talked about in the beginning of the presentation, the 4 areas that we wanted to address. So the first is agencies and funding. And the tools that we'd like to use are to provide uniform financial forms for the agencies, so that we're kind of comparing apples to apples across, that will ask for certain key data from each agency. Of course, there will be room that they could add in extra things, but for the majority of the form, it will be uniform data across agencies. Also, we'd like to provide an annual kind of funding and evaluation training for all the agencies that are a part of CAN. So under agencies and funding, those are the 2 tools we'd like to use, and begin those again every January, especially if we need to tweak the financial forms, we'll tweak those and give those out every January. Then under organizational effectiveness and social construction, so much of social construction depends on the communication that's happening between all the different stakeholders. So what we would like to do here is have quarterly reports sent to CAN, and then CAN publish a quarterly newsletter, and we can just do this online, not to add additional postage costs, those kind of things. But this quarterly newsletter can enhance communication really between all stakeholders. And so the plan is that early in these months, March, June, September, and December, the information will be due. And by the end of the month, can produce the newsletter. Then organizational effectiveness and stakeholders, and this ties so closely with the social construction and the communication there. It's really just a continuation, but we felt like, especially for like board of directors and donors, that twice a year to have good, solid data communicated. And so if we could have an annual web conference in the spring, April, early May, where, there was one set of data presented, then also late in the year, October, early November, before the holidays, to have an annual celebration dinner that could really recognize volunteers, donors, and celebrate milestones that had been accomplished. And then the fourth area that we wanted to address in solutions were the performance metrics. And once again, we felt like if we had some uniform documentation so that everybody was submitting kind of on an equal level playing field, whether qualitative and quantitative reporting for the agencies back to CAN, that was a mistype that we took out once, but seems to have appeared again there. To report quantitative data should just be gone. But under qualitative, we felt like we could use photo voice or video highlights of the agency. So once again, that's just a way to present those interviews, surveys, those kind of things that to be communicated out to the stakeholders. Also, if CAN could support the agencies by either having an evaluator or I know other particular groups, Carmen, what is the term? The process
assessment
specialist. Yeah, assessment specialist,
Mm-hmm.
process specialist. In my world, we have an evaluator that we use, but I felt like if there was one person that could sort of work across the agencies, I mean, let's face it, a lot of, as Dr. Hamilton calls it, high impact or for impact organizations, their strong suit is not, their strong suit is usually not the numbers or the business. Their strong suit is not often communication. It's really their passion for what they want to do. But one thing that I have found helpful, I can't say that I'm probably one of those do-gooders that doesn't want to get bogged down in the business and the numbers. But of course, the older I get and the more I manage my own money, much less somebody else's money, I realize how important the numbers are. But one thing that we've used in my line of work that I have found very helpful is some work by Mark Friedman, and I'm going to hold up the book here, Trying Hard is Not Good Enough. And I think it just reiterates exactly what we've been talking about today, that the numbers do matter. They might need to be separate from the qualitative, but they do matter. And so I'd like to show you a slide that are just two of the concepts from results-based accountability that I love. Is that one is the big circle there under the whole population, that reflects what we would like to see in our communities or our cities, that we want, all people having their needs met, all people enjoying good health, all children ready to come to school and learn. So there's a whole population goal, but then there's that client population goal, and that's the place that agencies are really held to their performance accountability. So this is more on the program, the organization, the agency or service system level. And there's quite a few different forms and charts in this material here by Mark Friedman, but I felt like that this one has been so helpful to me in trying to quantify and relate some of my work. And so these four quadrants really show how much did we do, which pretty much, is a way to put the numbers. And this is something that like every agency could report back on: the number of customers served, the number of activities. But then also you need to put like how well you did it. So let's just say you had 30 activities, but none of them really resulted in much. That might be one thing, or there might be just one activity. And so sometimes putting it into percentages of, and I've been having an eye issue for about 4 months, and these slides are not quite big enough on either screen that I'm looking at here for me to read the details there. I guess I could read it in the book, actually.
Which ones, Tammy?
Under the common measures and the activity-specific measures on the upper right, under common measures.
I don't see it. Oh, I see it. The workload
ratio.
Okay.
Go ahead.
Yeah.
Staff turnover rate, staff morale, percent of staff fully trained, worker safety unit cost, and customer satisfaction. Did we treat you well is the question.
All of those are measurable.
Mm-hmm.
That's right.
That's quantitative. All of those, even staff morale, working conditions is measurable. We call it climate. We can measure climate, and that's staff morale, working conditions. All of those are measurable. They're not debatable. They're measurable. That's right. And then down at the bottom, I think, is really where it gives us a chance to show off the qualitative. So is anyone better off? Have their skills or knowledge changed? Has their attitude or opinion changed? Their behavior or their circumstances? And then it's important to go on and take it over to the right-hand side to look at the percentages, because let's just say that, let's just say, 45 circumstance changes for your clients. Well, if you only had 50 clients and the circumstance changed for 45, that would be quite impressive. If the circumstance changed for 45 people and you had 1,000, it might not be quite as impressive. And so to put those numbers into actual numbers and then move them over to a percentage can really add some context to those numbers. But I've especially enjoyed this tool because, working with organizations in my job, that kind of thing, sometimes it's hard to quantify, working with groups, and whether it's, especially to a funder, oh, well, what did you do with this group? Well, you've had 10 meetings with them. You've exchanged, 25 emails. You have done 10 hours of research. And so it's really helped me to see that there are a lot of quantifiable things to communicate to funders. So I've really enjoyed these results-based accountability tools and have found them helpful in working with groups, and just wanted to share it with the group today. I think some of these tools could be very helpful to the Community Action Network in Austin, Texas. Yes, they would be.
So looking at the fact of what Tammy talked about with the quantifiable measurables, we look at the quality research decision design, because we have learned with no doubt qualitative is actually measurable. Correct, sir?
Quantitative is measurable. Qualitative, we gather information and we make decisions and we debate that information, but there's not measures for qualitative. It's more ethereal, how people feel.
Right. So I'll keep going back to that.
We can't just put measures on qualitative.
Right. But what we have to do is understand how important qualitative is.
Because themes emerge.
Yes, sir. No doubt. They do emerge, but a way that we can look at how we determine this qualitative research, and we look at our nonprofits, such as, I'm going to keep going back to the homeless shelter. A lot of times, this quality, it's more of a feeling, but it's a good feeling, and it's a feeling that, in fact, if we do the research through these different designs that we have here, that was in our Merriam and Tisdale studies, it shows that, in fact, it is, and that's what I want to point out. that qualitative research is very relevant.
It's valid.
Sorry?
That's correct. It's valid. Qualitative research is valid. It is data. For some reason, too many folks think that we can't act upon qualitative, that it's not true data. It's not data points. That it's just because it's just opinion that it doesn't matter, that it doesn't have any validity. But that's not true. Qualitative research yields real data and real data points. Even though it's not something we can measure, people's opinions do matter.
That's why in this particular case study, I go back to the professional staff, and I'm still speaking of the homeless shelter. This is to show that the qualitative data and research, these are decisions that our authors told us about. It's 5 different methods that are listed here that tell us, yes, once we do the research, in fact, that this data can be a very high, critical, important factor to making final decisions for this nonprofit of CAN in Texas. Yeah. Well, once we get those decisions, we do have to use some type of evaluation, because we do know, even in the nonprofits, as Tammy had stated earlier, we have to have documentation to show, in fact, that we need to exist from one year to the next, and we must document that. Here we have 2 designs, the exploratory sequential design and the convergent parallel mix. Well, this is considered a theory or a method once we use these designs to state, in fact, no, we cannot mix quantitative and qualitative. However, we can look at within the qualitative our decision-making methods and processes on how these particular functions can occur. So if you look at the first one, you see you have your qualitative collection and analysis, you have your quantitative collection and analysis, and you have interpretation. Then that's one way. So they are not the same, but yes, they are both equal importance. So that's what we are trying to establish with these particular slides here. And it's just different types of theories and methods to come up with this particular information. Finally, we look at, as we stated in the beginning, this particular case study, we have the situation where we need to measure or quantify or determine or illustrate what is and what is not important. Well, we recognize that you must know what that mission is, and you have to have, and we're really saying the same thing, we're just finalizing, that you must have that mission, the vision, the goals, the strategies, and the tactics or activities all in one chain link with all of the professional staff working together to ensure that, in fact, that nonprofits in the private sector do have measurement, and the effectiveness makes it important to exist from one year to the next.
And we'd like to conclude by saying, if can, you can. You can.
All right, go back one slide. All right, look at the red boxes on the lower right-hand side of the screen. Which 2 of those have been switched or in the wrong order? For your example.
Mission and vision.
Mission and vision. There you go. Yeah, vision comes first. And in the examples that we've been using today, in these kind of nonprofit organizations, vision comes first before mission.
Because we need to know what we're going to do so we can identify what we're going to do.
There you go. There you go. Good point, Emma. That's exactly right.
Got it.
Yeah, those 2 are superimposed. Other than that, all right. I want to. Excellent job. Anybody have any questions? Golf clap here. I'm running a little over our time, but I'm going to show you one more thing, and then I'm going to conclude. So I'm going to.
You want me to stop share?
Reclaim host. You stop share. And I'm the host now. And so I'm going to share my screen. I'm going to go back to my desktop. All right. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to skip ahead a little bit. Because I am such a terrible teacher. Come on now. Let's see. That's not what I want. Okay. All right. Here we go. I'm sorry. I think this is it. Yeah, this is the one I want. Yeah, this is the one I want right here. Let me download it. See, I did such a terrible job last semester. We got to this one. This is going to be a later case study, and I'm kind of letting the cat out of the bag here. And so you're going to give feedback to this person, and here is the qualitative data that was collected through interviews. There are 16 individual data points here. And so when I ask students to make a decision about what to do with Jasmine, they said, well, we can't decide whether, we came up with a growth plan. We gave her feedback. We came up with a growth plan. And I said, well, should we keep Jasmine in this position or not? There's 16 data points here, and none of them scream or even whisper customer service, and she's in customer service. There are 16 data points here that say that this person shouldn't be anywhere near customer service. Should we keep her? And they said back to me, this is because I'm such a terrible teacher, well, we don't have enough information to make that decision. So what you're telling me is that qualitative data has no weight, has no bearing, that it's not real data. And so what I realized, maybe too late for that group is that they didn't really, I don't know that they got it, that qualitative information, qualitative data is real. That just because you can't just discount, oh, that's somebody's opinion, but it's still real. It's just as real as the quantitative numbers, how many people you served and how much money you spent. Those are real numbers. But qualitative data is real as well. Look at this. There are 16 data points here. And all 16 say, don't let these person anywhere around customers.
Yeah.
And they said, well, we can't make a decision about whether we should keep her or not. We don't have enough data. How much data do you need?
So even if it's perceptions and even if it's false perceptions?
But this is customer service. This is the people that she directs an 11-member customer service team. And this is what the employees say about her.
And you have to look at the theme, too.
Yeah.
There's a theme here. How many interviews is this?
They interviewed all 11 of her employees.
Okay, well, if all 11 are saying the same thing, then
themes emerge. That's how qualitative data is. Excuse me for interrupting you, Carmen.
That's fine.
Themes emerge. When we do quantitative, the themes are already there. We're looking for data in those. But qualitative, we let themes emerge. We don't go in a priori figuring out, what we want, what we're looking for. Qualitative, you do interviews and focus groups, and themes emerge on their own. Yeah. And Carmen's exactly right. There's a common theme here, that this person shouldn't be anywhere around customers. She never gets a response with angry customers. Well, if she was in a different department, but she's in customer service. How do you not make a deserve? That's what you do. You handle angry customers. That's what customer service is. She canceled meetings. Customer service has got to be timely to be effective. You do the right thing, but if you do it a month later, you've lost the whole impact. She's never around. Customer service is 24/7. She asked for input, but that's a bad thing because she's just sitting there and let the wind blow. She's not guided by customer service principles. She wants somebody else to make a decision for her.
Well, this tells me she wasn't trained.
No, she wasn't trained at all. And so that's the whole idea in this one. Do we spend the time and money? We develop a training plan or a growth plan. But my whole overarching theory here is this the right person to be trained? Does she have the dispositional characteristics? And see, that's what we're talking about here. Qualitative information is dispositional. Is she on time? Is she a people person? Can she make decisions? Is she responsible? Is she reliable? All of those kinds of things. Those are dispositional. That's what qualitative data is. It's dispositional, but it's still real data. But to Carmen's point, is this person, does she have the disposition or the personality traits to be in customer service? Before we spend all this time and money.
Right person on the right bus. That's
exactly. We go back. We go back.
This just may not be her strength.
And
that goes back to the leader and what position on the bus is she in?
This goes back to Collins. She may be a great person, but she's definitely not in the right seat in customer service. Nothing about all these 16 individual data points that I could take a pencil and circle. I see 16 data points here, and all 6 of these that say she doesn't need to be in customer service. Oh, my Lord. This would be the last person you'd hire for customer service. Now, do you have another role in your organization for her? I can't see spending any real amount of money on a person that by disposition is not a customer service person. That's not going to change. When I have students, doctoral and master students, they say, I'm going for an interview. Can you help me? And I do that. I work with folks on interviewing a lot. I don't know that I have any skill at it, but I spent a year with the Gallup organization learning qualitative methodology, although I'm a quantitative person. But it's about interviewing and perceiving the right employees. And so I work with people on a regular basis, and they say, I fear the question about what are my strengths and what are my weaknesses? And that's the easiest question you're going to get. Well, really, how? Your strengths should always be dispositional because those aren't going to change. Mm-hmm. You're a fully formed adult. I'm polite. I'm ethical. I'm on time. I'm prepared. I'm responsible. I'm legal. I have good organization. Those are my strengths, things that are not going to change, that are embedded in me. My weaknesses are things that are based on my lack of experience, that I just haven't had the opportunity yet. And that's why I'm applying for this job, is I would like the opportunity to learn and grow. And so my weaknesses are always based on inexperience, not yet. I'm not a morning person, or I'm late all the time. And, I show up, hungover with the same clothes I had on yesterday. Goes back to the Jack Black movie, School of Rock, when the kids, he's a substitute teacher, and the kids say, oh, the teacher's drunk. And he said, no, I'm hungover. That means I was drunk yesterday. Let's be accurate here. People that stay out in bars and drink and come dressed in the same clothes with stamps on their hands don't need to be in the school business. They don't have the right dispositional skills. So that's what we're talking about here. Yes, qualitative information is people's opinion. It is dispositional mostly, but it's valid data points. Do not discount it just because it's interview or observation. Do not discount it. It matters. In this case, we see a clear picture here that Jasmine does not need to be in customer service. There may be something else in our organization that she would be really good at, but she's, as M.A. pointed out, she's in the wrong seat on our bus. Now, the the next question then would be, is this the right person in our organization? Obviously, she's not in the right seat. Are there things here that would lead you to believe that you don't need her in your organization? See, for me, she couldn't work for me.
I guess that's why we have that, what we learned under Dr. Balls is that commitment versus, is it competition, guys?
Competency.
Competency. Commitment versus competency.
That's correct.
So if she has competencies in another area within the organization that is also lacking, do you want to start up all the benefits and paperwork, especially with the way technology is today, on getting rid of her or keeping her or hiring a new person? So that's
or developing her, really. I mean, you could do a strengths assessment or,
right.
I mean, I think you could, I mean, if you wanted to give her another chance, but I think the immediate need is to move her out of customer services immediately, because that's doing damage to your business. Move her out and then determine whether or not do we give her another chance, maybe give her some training, maybe, but you need to know a little bit more about her. Yeah.
Right. We need to know that.
Don't equivocate now. Come on now, Carmen. That's not equivocate. There's one word on the screen that's the key word that says she has to go.
Okay, wait a minute. Well, I'm not seeing the whole. Are y'all seeing the whole screen?
No.
Yeah, we can't see the whole screen, so don't be too hard on us.
Data.
From what you can see, there's one word on this screen that's a disqualifier for me, that you can't work for me.
Okay, hold on.
It's right in the middle of it's exactly in the middle of the picture.
Sarcasm.
There you go.
I didn't see it. Yeah.
There's an organizational group out of Carborough, Chapel Hill, that works in organizational development. And one of the first questions the first morning when you go into this group, and I can't mention their name because it'd make me pay them money. They're very expensive, by the way. But the first morning that you go in, one of the things they ask you is is humor a part of your leadership style? Humor is a part of your leadership style, raise your hand. And everybody in the room's got their hand raised, oh yeah, everybody loves me. I use humor all the time. And they said, keep your hand up if your primary method of humor is sarcasm. Everybody's, about 90% of the people got their hand raised, keep their hand up. And then they explain to you, sarcasm is not humor. It's passive-aggressive behavior. It has no place in organizations. It's why we have the Me Too movement and all these other things that have been going on in our business, is people think sarcasm is humor. It is not. It is aggressive behavior. It's actually a form of abuse. It has no place in organizations. And so when I see that sarcasm, she's very childish. I don't appreciate being made fun of in front of my peers. She has a biting sense of humor that turns people off. She can't work for me. That's a form of abuse. That's abusing your employees. Yeah. She's been allowed to abuse the people underneath her supervision. Can't work for me.
Well, sir, I know we're in the 21st century now, and things are changing all over the world. However, and we still have different styles of leadership. So, in the autocratic type leadership, that was a form that was used, and still have old heads like me, who I still feel I'm relevant. I have been to Afghanistan. I have been all over the world. You have to understand that 56 years old, a lot of people are still in the working world. So as leaders, we have to be able to detect the different styles of characteristics and styles of personality and leadership to be able to upfront determine, don't hire that person before they put that bad in there, because we never know. It's not for us to analyze and find the root cause of why their behavior the way it is. But I tell you, I'm still defending my autocratic personality because it saved lives, sir.
In certain areas, you need those kinds of things, but not in nonprofit organizations.
I agree.
there's,
you have to stand up for people, though.
you know,
You have
we
to stand
can't judge people for
exactly
by today's standards for 40 years ago when things were different. We can't judge people in nonprofit organizations for behaviors that would be okay in military organizations. But what we're working on is nonprofit organizations. We're working on 4 impact organizations. This person works in customer service in one of those organizations. You know, this is not mission specific that somebody's going to get killed if they don't follow the directions. This is about a client system. And so this person can't work in our client system. She might be, you know, she might could work in something else. She may have the disposition to work in something else, but certainly not in customer service in a nonprofit organization.
Dr. Lam.
But without us not knowing all the information of the case, I think I like the concept of the creativity as far as the leadership style, have to understand what is the culture. And I think that's what this situation is. You're correct, sir. In the customer service client, you need to have that empathy and humility and sensitivity.
There are certain required dispositional characteristics. And so you don't need to know any more than this is a customer service person.
Right.
Dr. Lam.
So you said don't add nothing to it.
Dr. John Bowles always was saying, like, as a leader, you cannot motivate your people, but you can create the environment. So if you as a leader create the environment by training, give them the training and all of this stuff, and still this person don't motivate, so you have to change it.
Yeah.
Either change his place or just let them go. So
yes, but to kind of conclude this morning's presentation, a lot of this goes back to Frederick Hertzberg and his theories of motivation. And to Razan's point that Dr. Ball's made with y'all is that the leader can't be a satisfier. You can be a dissatisfier. You can't be a satisfier. You have to learn that the work itself, working conditions, job satisfaction is derived from the work itself. But now you can be a dissatisfier with your bad personality traits and your bad dispositions. And so that's the whole notion here, back to Hertzberg, is that if you abuse your people, and sarcasm is a form of abuse, it's passive aggressive behavior. If you abuse your people, you can turn people off and run people away. And you can, if they're paid staff or if they're volunteers, they will not work with you. This kind of person cannot work in customer service. But the bigger point here is there are 16 points of data on this paper right here in front of you. Although they're not number related, they're still valid data. I don't want us going through this course and thinking that I need more information. I need hard numbers always to make a decision. You can't always have hard numbers to make a decision. These are, in effect, hard numbers. This is real data. There are emergent things. And I don't want, as a quantitative person, I don't want to get to the end of this course and have not done my due diligence for you to understand and respect the value and the power of qualitative data as well as the quantitative numbers. I appreciate Tammy's slide from trying hard is not good enough. I like that the box had a hard line between the qualitative and quantitative. That means we can't cross that. We can't just kind of mix them all up. We can't talk about, well, we only served this many, but we really did a good job. No, you only served that many. Now, we'll talk about the kind of job you did with them, but we did a really good job is not a part of how many you served. That's a number. That's not a feeling or that's a number. And when we start to mix qualitative and quantitative, especially in nonprofit environments, that's when we get into trouble. That's when we get goal displacement. That's when we get too many people. We can't get our mission going in the right direction. We got too many people that want, I want this and I want that. That's why that collaboration and communication has to come in first. But qualitative data does matter. It is valid. It is real. It should have a seat at the table, but you can't mix the qualitative and the quantitative. The numbers are the numbers. Yes, ma'am. I'll let the last word.
Okay, Dr. Lamb. So I just wanted to say that I had talked with one of the major service organizations here in Cleveland County and talked with them about results-based accountability, and they said, oh, we are really good at the top half. We report our numbers and all that, and they said we really never go back to see is anybody better off.
Yeah.
And so I think that's one thing that I really like about the results-based accountability, because you can put numbers out there, you can show that you've done this, done this. But honestly, if you've had meetings, you've sent emails, you've met with 5,000 clients and nobody's better off, you got some explaining to do to whoever's writing that.
Exactly right. You have to do both sides. Excuse me. You have to do both sides. But by kind of mixing them together, that's kind of the last refuge of scoundrels and charlatans, when they start trying to cloud the issues and claim that there are numbers there that weren't, or that we're doing good, that we can't. We're doing good simply because of the numbers. We don't actually have any feedback from anybody that says we're doing good. We're doing good based on our numbers. It works both ways, and so that's why you can't let those cross over. That's why in that box with those four quadrants, there was a hard line between the top and the bottom. And that's how it works in our business. Is we can't confuse the two or mix the two. Ethical people do not do that. The numbers are the numbers. The feedback is the feedback. We don't try to mix them up to confuse and obfuscate the point. And that's one of the things that I see way too much reported nowadays is that we report commentary as fact and vice versa. Our opinion is fact, commentary. And that's what I hope to, but by the time this course is over with, I'm hoping that you will all understand is it's okay to have your opinion. But you can't, that's not numbers. That doesn't change the numbers. It adds quality to what we're doing. That's why we call it qualitative work, but it's not quantifiable. We can't pretend that it's a real number. Just because I feel like there was 2 million people showed up, that doesn't mean 2 million people showed up. You can feel that way, but we can't portray that as numbers. That's how we get in trouble in the nonprofit sector, is we try to portray our feelings as numbers. And that never goes well for you.
No.
All right, we made it in 2 hours today. We did good. I like your presentations, well thought out, well planned, prepared. We've had lively discussion today. I hope that you owe me your PowerPoint. Everybody can send the same PowerPoint. You owe me your PowerPoint. I'll send you the link to today's recording. I'll do that as soon as we get done. You owe me a one-pager on a reflection from today of what you learned working with your group. Did you get anything from this morning's section? Just your general thoughts. There's no right or wrong on that. Just what do you feel about? If it's a half page, I'm happy. If it's a page, I'm happy.
It's a reflection about the class as all, or about the case study.
Yeah, the class itself. What'd you get from this study? What are you getting from the class so far? I mean, write me a reflection of where you are right now, what we need to be doing more of, what we need to be doing less of. What are you getting from your reading? What are you getting from these case studies? Write me a one-page reflection that kind of summarizes, what your thoughts are. I need, and see, again, that's data collection for me. It guides my instruction and where I need to go. See, it helps me. And it helps you sometimes to put your thoughts down on paper as well. All right, what's next? Anything for the good of the group? I appreciate you all being here this morning. I have enjoyed it.
Thank you. I have to.
Good day. I'll send you the recording in about an hour when it processes.
Bye, everybody.
Bye-bye.
Have a good weekend.
Great weekend.
Bye-bye.
Have a good week.
You too.
Bye.